Ma'am, your accountability slides look super pretty, but when stuff goes down, you're going to get your wing commander fired. That came from the lovely Master Sergeant Smith. He was a Security Forces senior NCO, huge amount of dip in his lip, and he had just crushed my entire briefing. I wanted to hate him. Instead, he changed the way I lead. Now, if you've seen the movie Inside Out, some people love it. Not for me. It has a lot of the F word, which Isaiah's feelings, and kind of just seemed a little bit slow moving. I tend to be a little bit task oriented, so I like to deal in facts and numbers and just, hey, what needs to get done. But that movie actually explains something that Harvard has spent over $2 million trying to understand. And it all starts with a grumpy senior NCO who probably saved my career. So picture this, we're in the Emergency Operations Center. You have representatives from all these different career fields, and it acts sort of as this hub whenever we have a real world or an exercise where we need to be integrating across units and making sure that we're taking care of the people and the installation. So, because I'm in personnel, one of the key things I have to do is brief accountability. And I'm pretty proud of myself. It's like if Excel and PowerPoint had a baby, this is just beautiful. And I've done metrics and all sorts of information to make this really good. And I've thought about the second and third order effects. I've used all of my training, even though I'm a brand new lieutenant, on trying to make this a really comprehensive briefing. And Master Sergeant Smith, who I had told him that, hey, dip isn't good for you. And he's like, yeah, thank you. I've been to many health briefings on that. He's just, yeah, I mean, what happens if the power goes out or, the network crashes? And I'm sitting there going like, yeah, I've thought about that. Here's how we would mitigate it. Here's what we would do. And he says, no, like, what if everything goes out? And we were located at an installation that was really known for flooding from hurricanes. And he had gone through one of those. And he said, we couldn't account for 300 people. The wing commander almost got fired over it. And it was because this plan had some gaps. And I remember being in the EOC, and he and I are just going back and forth at it because I've been taught you want to learn from individuals that have been in longer than you. But I have thought this through and I'm trying to provide my expertise and help to move this mission forward. And I can literally feel my face just getting redder and redder. And I do not have a good poker face at this point. I definitely have an RBF going on. The whole room is quiet because they're listening to me banter with this guy. And he tops it off. He's not even done. He's like, you're not thinking operationally and, you need to think about something that's simple and quick. And it was so frustrating. But here's the thing about Matt Sergeant Smith. We finished our conversation. We're a couple more days in, and now we're in MOP 4 year, all the way top to bottom. But it is so hot. Imagine it's the summer. You're in North Carolina, not the best air conditioning, and you've got the gas mask on. You've got these massive gloves. You are just dawn from head to toe. Sweat is dripping down. You have to sip through a little straw to get water. Awesome. On top of that, you actually have to wear this helmet. And I am like all out of sorts and looking crazy, but you can't see yourself. And Grumpy Master Smith comes over and he's like, give me your helmet. So moves the pads around, helps me, shows me how to adjust them. It tells me, okay, this is what you need to do. The way you have it's too loose. If anything happens, this is what's going to occur. And then he's looking at me, right? He grabs two pens, I think they were pencils, and he's like, okay, I've seen you struggling when you're trying to type your little situational reports in your gloves. Do this as you're typing. And it suddenly hits me, this guy, my Sergeant Smith, who I kind of at this point feels is my enemy, is actually trying to help me. And so I take this flashback where I watch Inside Out again, and this time it's with my nephew. And suddenly I get it. Joy, your happy character, thinks that she's protecting Riley by creating this bubble, by keeping everything positive, and by controlling everything. Everything needs to be perfect. But when Joy actually accepts all those other emotions, the sadness, fear, and anger, what occurs? Wisdom occurs. And that's when you see actually Riley thriving. So if I go back to Matt Sergeant Smith, he was sort of my fear. He was helping me to understand what could and would go wrong. Anger, that's just frustrated by multiple failures. Sadness, grieving for losses that could have been preventable. See, there's a ton of research done by MIT that talks about this concept called cognitive diversity. We just need different ways of thinking. But here's what the research actually misses. You don't need just different thinkers. You need to value the discomfort they bring. So everyone now talks about psychological safety, and it makes me actually want to roll my eyes and go, okay, thanks, awesome, another buzzword. But here's what it actually means. Google found that the best teams have one thing in common. People feel safe saying, this won't work without getting destroyed. And what this means is that if you're in an organization where you feel safe, one, you're a lot more apt to actually say, hey, I messed up when you did. And then the other thing is you actually see a decrease in the amount of errors because people are coming in earlier and saying, hey, yep, let's talk through this. This is where you could potentially run into an issue. And so what this looks like in real life is Master and Smith telling a lieutenant, your plan sucks. And instead of me getting defensive, it's saying, okay, teach me. Now, I could probably do a whole other video on the frustration I have sometimes when people are just really gruff and to the point. I've seen people who have that ability to make you feel good about being wrong or say, hey, I love your idea. And I think if we can address X, Y, and Z, we can move forward. However, if you work with someone that doesn't have that finesse or polish and they just come straight at you and say, this won't work, what I would challenge you is to have that maturity to say, okay, let's talk this through. Tell me where it's not going to work. And then if you had to make it work, what would you change or do differently? Something else I've kind of liked, I'll put this in the comments, is that if you're trying to convince someone on an idea and you say on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely do you think this idea would work? And let's say a 3, then you can say, oh, well, I'm surprised. Like, I thought you would have said a 0. What are the aspects that you think potentially in this plan do have some validity or could work? So I want to leave you with a couple of tips and tricks. The first one I call is the Smith test, named after this guy. And so before you have a presentation or you've got something big due, find that epic critic, the one who loves to point out when you've missed a comma or tell you, hey, this isn't going to work. And, take them out to lunch or buy them coffee and just ask them, like, break my plan. Like, show me what won't work. Be that red team. We often use that terminology. And then just shut up and take notes. Don't argue. Shut up, which I could still work on. Okay. Second tip is the MOP 4 principle. And the concept is always have a pencil solution for your computer problem. Translation, what's the simplest non-technology way that if you had to do it this way, that you could? And sometimes because we know technology is amazing and wonderful and can help us, we rely on it too heavily and we go, man, in this case, there might actually be a simpler, more just basic way to do it that will still get the same outcome. On top of the fact that when technology has a glitch, because it's not if, you now have that backup plan. My third tip is to do your inside out audit. And that is to look at the team that you're working with and identify who are the ones that bring out some of those emotions. So, who's your joy? The person that's really positive, but might miss problems. I'm definitely fall in that category. Who is that sadness? The one that could potentially see that something may go wrong. What about anger? Those are the people that look for injustice or for something that just doesn't actually make sense. And fear. Sometimes this is those lawyers. They really spot the risk very well. So circle back to the EOC where I was working hand in hand with Matt Sergeant Smith. We did have a great conversation and we started to just jam out on all of these contingency plans. And it was painful. And I'm not going to say I absolutely enjoyed it. And the smell of nicotine would sometimes be overwhelming. But we came up with a really great contingency plan. And about a week before I went on my first deployment, there was a massive hurricane that came through. It was just horrible. We had a ton of flooding, and the power for the whole area was out for 8 days. And while accountability was still very, very difficult to do, I was so grateful that we had come up with a plan, and our wing commander was thrilled that a lot of the questions that we had at least kind of thought through what his options were and what he could do. And while that's a great story in and of itself of just being better prepared, The thing that I really noticed was in the sections that I worked were we had people that were engaging more in crosstalk and were speaking up a little bit more about how things couldn't work. And we try to create that terminology of, hey, correct me to 100%. So if I did a brief and it was incorrect, I'd say, okay, well, what did I miss? And they say, yeah, you did a great job explaining field feeding, but here's what you need to add to this, or this one area is incorrect. And we just saw such an improvement in getting inputs and feedback from other individuals. So I know Inside Out is about emotions, but I also think it's about integration and it's about what actually works and how that works together. And even today, when I start to have individuals that give me feedback or talk through ways that can be different, my initial response is just always to push back. I have a lot of ownership in what I do and probably just pride, if I'm being honest. But I have to remind myself that leaders who actively seek that dissent, that feedback, make 23% better decisions than those that don't. And overall, what we don't even know is that we are turning down or pushing away people to disagree just in the way that we act, what we say, or what we do. So Master and Smith is long retired. And before he actually retired, he came up to me and he gave me a can of Copenhagen. And he knows I don't dip. And I still, would give him crap about how it'd be bad for him. And he said, hey, this is just a reminder. This is a reminder that wisdom comes from unexpected places. And I was just laughing at him like, you're so full of yourself. But it does remind me the importance of we needing people that are so different from us. I think it was Brene Brown that said, I don't have to be right, I have to get it right. So, my challenge to you is to identify the Mess and Smith that is in your life and to not avoid them, to seek them out. I'd love for you to share maybe something, an example or an individual that was your Master Sergeant Smith to you and potentially what you learned. As always, really appreciate you tuning in and please like and subscribe.